The morning train had long departed, leaving behind only the haunting echo of its whistle and the swirling snow that danced like ghosts across the empty platform. Beneath the wooden overhang of that forgotten western station sat a young woman, clutching a baby so tightly to her chest it seemed as though the child's breath was the only thing keeping her alive. Her dress, once white, was now dulled by dust and cold. Her bare feet trembled against the frost-covered planks, her eyes wide with a kind of pain that words could never describe. No one knew her name. No one asked. The few travelers who passed through the station merely glanced her way, some with pity, others with judgment, and moved on, as if she were part of the old structure itself, a piece of decay best ignored. She had arrived with the dawn train, escorted by a conductor who seemed more eager to be rid of her than to help. He'd muttered something about a fare left behind before he'd tipped his hat and climbed back aboard. When the wheels shrieked and the iron beast rolled away, she realized she was utterly alone. Alone but for the child in her arms, her only reason to breathe. She didn't even know if the world still had a place for her or if she had ever truly belonged anywhere. The wind howled through the cracks of the wooden platform, and her tears froze before they could fall. Somewhere down the tracks a new life was supposed to begin, but not hers. It was then that a shadow broke through the mist. A man approached, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a weathered duster coat that told of long rides and longer silences. His boots crunched in the snow, each step deliberate, cautious. A Colt hung heavy at his side, the glint of its steel muted by the grey morning. His face was calm, but unreadable beneath the brim of his hat, his jaw set with a quiet strength. The townsfolk called him the Silent One, for no one had ever heard him speak more than a handful of words. Some said he'd buried a wife once, others claimed he'd lost a war with his own heart. Whatever truth lay behind his silence, it rode with him like a loyal ghost. The woman looked up as he neared, her breath trembling in the cold. "Please," she whispered, "do you know where I can go? The man who was supposed to meet me, he never came." Her voice cracked like thin ice. The cowboy didn't answer. He just looked at her, then at the baby nestled in her arms. Something shifted in his eyes, not pity, not curiosity, but something deeper. He slowly removed his glove, knelt beside her, and without a word draped his coat over her shoulders. The warmth hit her like mercy itself. Why are you helping me?" she stammered. Still he said nothing. He only looked at the infant again, a softness flickering across his stern face. For a moment the world held its breath. Then, with the quiet care of a man who'd forgotten how to be gentle, he spoke the first words anyone had heard him say in years. "You're safe now." The wind carried his voice like a promise. As snowflakes caught in her hair, the woman finally allowed herself to weep, not from fear, but from the fragile hope that perhaps, in this cold and lonely place, she and her child had not been forgotten after all. They rode out from the station that same morning, the cowboy leading his horse beside her as she sat bundled in his coat, the baby pressed close to her heart. He didn't ask questions. She didn't volunteer answers. The silence between them was not empty. It was full, heavy with the unspoken things that didn't need to be said. The trail wound through a valley glazed in silver frost, the sky a pale wash of blue that promised another storm before nightfall. The cowboy rode with a stillness that unnerved her. Even the horse seemed to understand that its rider was a man of few words and many memories. By the time they reached his small ranch, tucked deep in the folds of the land, the woman was half frozen but alive. He lifted her from the saddle, as if she weighed nothing at all, carried her inside, and set her before a crackling fire. The baby stirred, let out a tiny whimper, and the sound seemed to thaw something inside him. He stared at the child with an expression she couldn't read. "You've done a brave thing," he said quietly. "Most would have given up before now." She looked up, startled by his voice. It was deep, gentle, yet lined with sorrow. "I didn't have a choice," she said softly. "He's all I have. I don't even have a name to give him." The cowboy nodded slowly, then turned his gaze to the fire. Names don't come from birth certificates, he said after a long pause. They come from the ones who see you for who you are. He turned toward her, eyes steady. What do they call you? She hesitated. They don't. Not anymore. For the first time, something like a smile ghosted across his lips. Then you do now, he said simply. You'll be Grace. Because the world may have taken your past, but you've still got grace enough to hold that baby and keep going. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, Grace. The word felt strange and beautiful on her tongue. The baby cooed, as if approving of the name, and the cowboy stood quietly by the fire, looking at them both like a man seeing light after a long storm. From that day forward, she helped mend his fences, cook his meals, and bring warmth back into a house that had long forgotten laughter. The townsfolk soon spoke of the silent cowboy who'd found his voice again because of a woman and her child left at a train station with nothing but hope. And as the years passed, whenever the wind howled down those empty tracks, Grace would hold her child close and remember the day a stranger gave her more than a home. He gave her a name, and with it, a new beginning.